Hi, everyone. I am Sarah Wright Olsen.
And I'm Teresa Palmer.
And we are here for a super duper special EMA Talks Mother's Day edition.
For those of you who don't know, EMA Talks is a conversation program at the intersection of arts and sciences where entertainers and creatives like us chat with experts in all sorts of topics dedicated to saving Mother Earth.
The EMA Talks program is brought to you by the Environmental Media Association, a 3-decade-old organization focused on educating the public on a variety of climate issues and innovations through media and entertainers. I am a longtime board member, and I couldn't be more honored to be part of this awesome program.
Yes. Okay, now let's get back to today's awesome subject. We are so honored to be focusing on a non-profit group called Science Moms.
Recently, Teresa and I wrote a book called The Zen Mama Guide to Finding Your Rhythm in Pregnancy, Birth, and Beyond.
So basically, we're all about representing our sisters out there.
Science Moms was co-founded by Dr. Emily Fischer with an incredible group of fellow rock star climate scientists, and she is here today to discuss how her group helps demystify climate science and motivate urgent action to protect our children's futures.
Dr. Fischer is an associate professor in the Department of Atmospheric Science, which is very cool. She's also an affiliate faculty member of the CSU School of Global Environmental Sustainability. She has been awarded a McElwain Medal as well as the American Meteorological Society, AMS, Atmospheric Chemistry Committee Outstanding Early Career Scientist Award. So basically, she's a total badass.
And most importantly, Emily is a mom of 2 daughters, ages 5 and 8. So, Emily, we are so excited.
Yes, welcome, Emily. Thanks for doing this with us.
Thanks for having me. This is so fun.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say thank you so much for being here. This is awesome to be able to talk to you.
I would love to just sort of jump straight in and start with a pretty simple question. Can you just explain to everyone watching what the Science Mum campaign is and why are you involved with it?
Sure. So Science Moms is a nonpartisan group of scientists who are also mothers, like both of you. We talked about this earlier. And so we're a group of scientists who work across the earth sciences, and climate change is either central or touches our work in some way. We all have children, and the ages of those children range. We have a grandmother on our team, and we have women with very new babies. So we have a large range in that, and our focus is on providing really clear, accurate, timely information on climate change in ways that moms will find accessible and trustworthy and maybe funny, maybe touching, right? So just relatable, accurate information from a group of scientists who also have kids.
I think it's so important. You know, it's great that you guys are doing this and reaching out to mothers, because I think a lot of times, especially for me and Teresa, when we, first became moms and we were trying to figure out, like what kind of example do we want to set and what's important to us in the sustainability world, it was like, it becomes a little bit overwhelming when you're looking up, okay, I don't want to be the 1,000 Ziploc bag mom. Like, I want to figure out how to do this differently. And sometimes it can feel a little scary and you're like afraid to jump into the world of eco and sustainability, because you're like, if I'm not 110%, then I'm not doing enough, And so there's a lot of shaming that people feel. And just like us in our, we wrote this book and we talk about how it's very judgment free, and that we should be able to share our stories and communicate and lift each other up, and everyone's story is unique. So I love that what Science Moms is doing is they're saying, okay, we're going to put the information out here, take what works for you. This is what we do as well, is take what works for you and leave what doesn't. So in that, as a scientist and a mom, how do you incorporate your own beliefs around climate change and sustainability into this campaign?
So I'm a working mom. So, I think this idea of judgment-free, do your best when you can do your best, and let the rest go is really important to me as well. So I have my kids, they're now 6 and 9, and I incorporate my work into my life in lots of different ways, right? I in fact hate this word balance, because to me, it's more like I'm on opposite ends of the seesaw all the time, right? But I try to keep sort of the big picture direction and focus. And so with my kids, incorporating sustainability and science into their lives is not hard, because they get dragged, right? Like they come to calibrate instruments sometimes because that's just how it needs to be. They've come on field campaigns because that's just how it needs to be. They know I'm doing things like this, and I'm always talking about climate and air quality. I'm always checking the weather. I'm always checking air quality data. So for me, that's how it gets incorporated. I think that we do a lot of other things that I'm sure other moms are doing as well, right? As they're tiny, we just spend a lot of time outside.
Yes.
Right. We just as much time outside as you possibly can. And that does not have to be huge, right? That can be, we're looking at rocks. Like, I mean, can be, right. I mean, depending on the age of your kids, right? That doesn't have to be this magnificent experience, right? It's just this accumulated small stuff of connecting them to the world and to other people, right? And so just, I try with my kids to instill a lot of different things. One, we use science for information, and we use that in our decision making. And then we love people, and we want people to be protected, and people are connected to the planet. So, those are kind of the basics in my house, how I connect things.
Well, when you said that you're checking the weather with these like weather instruments, what do you mean by that? And by the way, my son is going to want to watch this, because his favorite thing in the whole entire world is his science news of the week, at school. So he's just like, science is his. So now I need to, he's going to be like, what does she mean she's checking the weather with instruments? Like,
well, yeah, it depends, right? Like, I mean, I check the weather like everybody else, right? I mean, I check the National Weather Service weather just like everybody else, right? But I also check the air quality, right? Because I work on climate. I work on climate and air quality together, and so we at our house we talk about air quality in the same way that we talk about the weather. How should you dress today, and how's the air going to be today? So we do both together.
I actually noticed on my app, I have like one of the just the weather app on my phone. And I'd never seen this before, but it also says the air quality. I noticed it about 2 days ago. So it's funny that you're talking about that. I wanted to sort of circle back to something that you were just talking about in terms of folding the kids into the conversation about sustainability. We are a plant-based household. All of our kids are passionate vegans, and they have been for many years. And I think for them, they just want to learn so much more about sustainability, because we feel like we're already heading in the right direction, but there's still so much more that we could be doing as a family. If you could just sort of break down for the different ages. I mean, my kids, I have a 13-year-old, and then I have a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old. I'm pregnant. I have a bunch of kids. For just sort of the different ages, could you break down some tips for parents how to include children in those conversations?
Yeah, so climate change, like, let's focus on that because it's so hard, right? Yes. So climate change is hard, and it's overwhelming to kids. It can be overwhelming to kids, right? Because it's so big, and it's overwhelming to adults too, right? How do we talk about something that's so big? So first of all, I would start with sort of this overarching calm voice to moms to say, you don't have to understand everything about climate change to talk to your kids about climate change. For sure, you do not have to be a climate scientist to do this, right? The fundamentals of this are fairly straightforward. When we burn fossil fuels, greenhouse gases are produced, they build up in the atmosphere, right? That's creating a blanket. The earth is getting warmer. That causes ice caps to melt. sea level rises makes the conditions for fires, right? We know the cause, we know the outcome. So for that sort of simple science is accurate. That's what's happening right now on our planet, right? So that is what you need to know. But you don't have to explain that, but that's sort of the mom version that you can be armed with, right? Okay, so let's start with little kids, right? So little kids, let's start with your 2-year-old, your one, let's say 0 to 4.
Yeah.
With kids like that, I would just start with general environmental awareness. Do we love this planet? Do we love each other? Do we care about the future of it? What are the things that you value? What are the things that you love? What are the things that bring you joy? And I think that they're just such natural explorers at that age, that setting good examples and also just letting them explore is probably the right thing to do. And that's kind of the way I am with my kids. I think once you hit late elementary school, at least with my family, kids are going to start asking about climate change because they'll learn about it in school.
Yes.
And so with my daughter, who's now in 3rd grade, about a year and a half ago, she learned about climate change in school. And so she came home and she started crying. She said, "Mom, is this real?" And I said, "Yes." And then tears, right? And so there, I think you want to understand what they know, right? Let them talk to you. Say, "What do you know?" Tell them it's real, right? Say something, right? Because if you pretend that's not real, that's the worst thing you could do. That's sort of saying, right, that your personal comfort in that moment is more important than their emotions, right? About this thing that will impact their lives in a very real way and is impacting them now, actually. So there, I think you say something like, "This is real. This is human caused. And because it's human caused, we understand the problem and we can do something about it." So I reassure my elementary school aged kids by telling them Mom's working on it. I tell them, like I reassure them about everything, right? Like because there are other problems, right? That we come across in a day, I say, "I'm working on it. I will do everything I can." And when they want to do something, what I tell them is, the best thing you can do is to talk about this and raise this issue with as many people as possible. And there's both individual actions and community actions. So community actions are what are going to be required to get us out of this mess. Okay, so let's move up. So late middle school to high school, right? So there, I think they may know more than you know about climate change. It's quite possible, right? That they're coming to this conversation armed, right? And they're like, "Mom, what are you doing about this? This is real deal. And I've got facts and figures and whatever." And so in that case, I think don't be afraid of that. Say, "Oh, that's great job. Let's do some more homework on this." And I think at these ages, the best thing we can teach kids also is where to get good information. Right. So Science Moms is a great place to get information, but other place to get good information, NASA, NOAA, EPA, right? Like universities, right? Where do you get scientific information? International Panel on Climate Change, right? Like, where do we get real information? And I think that's one thing to do with older kids, and also encourage them to learn from other people, right? So there's resources like Science Moms, but there's lots of other ones, right? Where encourage them to learn more. And then I think it's helpful for that age to sort of empower them to think about what they want to do at whatever level they feel they have power in their communities, right? Maybe that's in their high school, maybe that's in their 4-H club, wherever that is, right? Wherever it is that they feel like they have community to do something around the issue. But the thing that I also try to emphasize with moms and kids is that this is a big problem and it will require communal action. It will require society level action in order to get us out of this mess. And so your voice is something you have, and that is your superpower. So you should use it and don't be afraid of using it, right? And so a kid may not be able to install solar panels on their home, right? But they can certainly use their voice, right? So that's a very accessible. And in fact, that's probably the most important thing that you can do right now.
I'm noticing, as I love everything you're saying, and I'm noticing that it's such just an important thing, because I think sometimes children feel so overwhelmed because they're so little in this big world. And my son talks to me about being so little in such a big world. And he's the only vegan boy in his class in Adelaide, South Australia. And he wants to talk to people about the reasons why he's plant-based. And there were, I noticed that we went through sort of a transitional period when he first got to the school and started talking about his beliefs in animals. And there was a little bit of teasing going on. Mm-hmm. And then ultimately he took it to the teacher, and the teacher said, let's build a subject surrounding the ecosystem and animals and their importance. And so then all of a sudden, the whole project for term 2 was about animals and taking care of animals and not killing insects. And I'm noticing that schools are really wanting to jump on board and educate in a way that's accessible for young children in particular. And Bodhi still talks about how they made posters and they stuck it around, and people went vegan every Monday. And it was just because he used his little voice and he was brave enough to stand up for what he believed in. And I just thought it was so beautiful what you said. Like, it just starts with like vocalizing how they feel. And that's something any child can do.
Yeah. And then also I really loved you talking about asking questions. When your kid comes home and they are asking you about climate change, then finding out the information that they already know and allowing them to tell you. We do that with our kids when it comes to talking about the universe or the great before, or, heaven or the great after. I want to know what they believe, because we don't have a specific religion that we practice. So, I'll ask my daughter, well, what do you think? And she comes up with these amazing things, and to me, that's so fascinating. Just kind of what their brain creates. So to know what it is that they think's happening, they think that is happening. But also, just sort of talking about like kids and what it is that they see in your world at home. My son actually challenged our husband when, I think he was like 6, he's 7 now. So maybe he was like 5 years old or 6 years old at the time. But he was like, Dad, you talk a lot about environmentalism, but you drive a car that is not a hybrid and it's not electric. And then my husband was like, yeah, I do. Right. You're right. And he goes, and we don't have solar panels on our house. And then my husband was like, you're right. And he goes, you know what? Together, we're going to work on this together, and we're going to try to start transitioning these things. Well, now my husband has an electric car. Now we have solar panels on our home. And he challenged us. And, there are things that you can do and things that you can change. Those are big things, obviously. Yeah. But there are little things too. And, I know that weather is such a big part of this. We talk with our kids about regenerative farming, because we talk about the farms that are around us in California and where we're getting our food from. During the pandemic, we were ordering food from a local farm to help support the local farm. And so we would get a farm box. And my son was like, well, is it a biodynamic farm? Do they practice regenerative farming? And I was like, wow, like the fact that this is coming out of his mouth, but it's because those are the documentaries that we watch with them on the weekends. Those are the conversations that we're trying to have with them. And they might not know everything about it, but it's really nice to have that come up and then be able to continue to talk about it. So, in California, we deal with a lot of fires, and that's
in Australia too.
Yeah, in Australia too. It's a big impact on the weather. How do you think climate change is playing a role in that? And what do you suggest for families dealing with climate weather events? Like, how would you communicate with your kids about it? And then what is it that you can do in your own home to help make changes for that?
Sure. So unfortunately, I had very good practice communicating about fires last summer. So we were out, pandemic moms trying to get their kids to do some kind of vacation. So we went out backpacking, and on our second day out, we got very, very close to the Cameron Peak fire, which ended up being the largest fire in Colorado history. So short story, the 4 of us ran out about 5.5, 6 miles. And that fire continued for 2 to 3 months and sort of blanketed northern Colorado with smoke. So we had sort of a high trauma experience with the fire.
Yeah,
Everything went very well, like as well as it could. And we, my kids got out and it was all okay. But then sort of that was constantly there all summer, right? We could see the plume from our house when the fire was active. So anyway, unfortunately, I've practiced this, and I don't know the right answer, but I talk to my kids about, and I think the general theme is sort of science-based decision making. So I say for fires, right? One fire cannot be blamed on climate change, right? But the environmental conditions that we are setting up in the Western US right now are supportive of larger, faster growing wildfires. We are sort of priming the environment for larger wildfires. And based on everything we understand, that will only get worse in a warmer world. And so I'm honest with that about my kids, right? And I'm honest with what the solutions are. Yes, there's land management issues, but attacking climate change absolutely is essential to this problem. And so I sort of separate both things, right? So I say, yes, we're expecting more natural disasters like this one. And I also tell them, we can understand and predict some of these things. And that's what earth scientists do. Earth sciences are essential to the world because this is how we predict natural disasters. And this is how we help society prepare for that. We understand the underlying drivers and we try to predict them, right? So that we can get people out of the way. And so that's how I approach that. In terms of, for those of you who are in California, unfortunately, it's looking pretty dry still. So you're probably going to expect I hope I'm wrong. But I expect you could have another severe wildfire season coming up. So, there was just something in NPR this morning, a nice interview with Craig Clements, who studies fires in California. And so anyway, California is kind of dry. And so for this smoke, right, smoke will be impacting more people than the fires themselves. And so thinking about, personal decision making when smoke comes to town. How do you keep kids indoors? Where are you going to get your data so that you kind of have a sense of what the levels of fine particulate matter are outside? So I help my kids in that way, just say, okay, we check the air quality, and if it's over, this value, if it's, the color red to orange on the scale, then we're not going to run around. And
what value? Which one do you? What is your no? What is your no-go? Because we do check the air quality so much in California because it is such a thing for us.
Yeah, and that's really good. California is really air aware, actually, because you have all sorts of other air quality issues in California. Yes. So it's really actually wonderful. But so for my kids, I notice they get itchy eyes and headaches later if the air quality index goes in that warm orange to red color.
Yeah.
And so that's where I pull that on my family. And so I think you just listen to your kids there and notice, right? My kids, as it gets a little worse than unhealthy for sensitive groups, that's when they start to feel it. And so they have one of them has allergies. So then I bring them in. But yeah, I kind of just check that every day. And I just, I think the theme here, right, is like use science and information for your decision making for yourself and for the world. So yeah, that's what I would say. But on natural disasters, I think we should be very direct, right? These things are linked to climate change, and there will be more of them in the future, and we need to work to stop that.
I noticed that in your on your website, there's videos and stuff that help kids as well to understand, climate change and weather and all of this a little bit better. Is that something for the moms? Are they showing them to their kids, like the cute little cartoons and stuff like that? Is that, can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, so the videos, I'm really grateful for having the opportunity to work with everybody on the Science Moms team to develop these videos, because scientists are historically not great communicators. Let's just face it, right? So, so it's really helpful to have people who are good communicators help us become better communicators. But so these, the videos, I think most of them are well suited for mothers, but they're perfectly accessible to kids.
Yeah.
Right? But some of them, it depends on the age of your kids, right? So, you know, my video, for example, you know, it has sad music, right? Yeah. When I showed that video to my own children, they were like, wow, mom, you really understand their sad music. Like, right. And so there is music there. Those videos are aimed to get your attention. They're aimed to help you feel climate change. So they're aimed to be accurate in that way, right? Everything in there is personal and very accurate, but it also is aimed to help women in particular feel climate change, right? Because it will be an issue for our children. And the timeline to act is the same timeline that we have from right now, if you're raising a young child, to getting them to college.
Yes.
That's the timeline for action, and that's real, and that's it. And later is too late. Like, we can't push that timeline anymore. And so those videos, I would say, you know, the cartoons and the line is great for kids. And I would say, depending on the age of your kids, whether you want them to feel that strongly.
They get a lot of big feels in the documentaries about the animals that are
mine
all the time.
Right. And so for one of my kids, that's fine. And for the other one, that's a lot. Right.
Yes.
It depends on how
it does
really
depend
on your kid.
Right.
Yeah. I have my Bodhi, my husband's firstborn. He's Mr. Sensitive guy. He is, you know, if he hears sad music, he will be crying. If he sees any sort of animal in trouble, if he sees ants that are going to get squashed, like he's that guy. And then my middle guy's just like, whatevs. Like, he's totally cool. So I love that it's so dependent upon the child. I have children who love being out in nature. They love exploring. They love going on walks and talking about various different things, which is wonderful. Not all kids are like that. I would just love to hear from you, like, how do we encourage children to get outside? I mean, there's so much technology these days, so many devices. We're coming out of a pandemic where so many people were just stuck at home. How do we start to, like, encourage that reconnection with nature? I'd love to just hear some tips from you. I'd love to just hear some tips from you about that.
Oh, sure. On my front with my kids, I will do whatever they want to do, and I just make sure it's positive. So, right. What's most important to me is that it's short and positive, right? And so that, you know, we're water people. I joke with my kids that I'm half mermaid, because I'm originally from Rhode Island. So even, which is hard living in Colorado because it's kind of dry.
It's dry and cold.
Dry. But anyway, I mean, we just, you know, I just say, oh, we're just going to go down to the river and we're just going to get stones and we're going to paint them. Like, if they want to do art, we go to the river to get the stones to paint them. And then we end up spending, you know, 3 hours, whatever, catching frogs.
Right.
Right. And so, you know, same thing with skiing. We're just going to go out for a little, you know, we're going to take the dog and we're going to just do this little thing and it's going to be fun and don't worry about it. And as soon as you're cold, we'll come right back. And look at all the snacks I have. So
yes, snacks.
And have you seen my special snack bag? It's amazing. I'm not telling you what is in it until you're like on the way.
Yes.
So I think that I just use whatever, you know, early in the pandemic, I got my kids into birding. And, you know, I'm an atmospheric chemist. It may seem I might know about things, but I don't know about anything that's alive, right? So for me, looking at birds was just as exciting as it for them. I was like, I have no idea what that bird is. Turns out they'll be like the most common bird in Colorado.
Right.
Like the state bird. But so, you know, we got into birding for a little bit. That was really fun. The other thing I've been telling my kids is that if the weather's really bad, I'm like, we're going to have the place to ourselves. It's going to be amazing. Like, remember that time when we were out and nobody else was there and we saw the owl, right? And so I try to, you know, depending on what it is, but But yeah, I think just being outside in I don't know, I have a yard, which is really wonderful part of being in Colorado.
Yeah, there's not a lot of yards in some of these bigger cities. That's
right.
for sure.
And so, one of my daughters likes gardening, the other one doesn't. Right. And so for that daughter, I'm like, hey, let's dig. So it, I think it depends on your kid, but I do think, getting them out into the littlest park, little spaces for kids, this does not have to be like this amazing experience, right? Any park that has a worm, right, is
I was just gonna say, sometimes it's like you're just following their lead too, right? Because my daughter, Teresa knows this about her, but she loves bugs and anything that crawls, and like, for me on my insides, when she picks up these random things, my insides are like, oh, it's so gross, but on the outside, I try to encourage and foster, like I'm allowing her the space to be in love with these roly-polies. And she's so excited because we just set up a compost system. And I was like, we're getting 2,000 worms. And she was like, can they live inside the house? And I was like, no, they have their own house and it's in outside. And it's not going to be in here. And so, it's funny too, because she has this thing where she's like, we found this baby rattlesnake, and she was telling us, she was like playing with us in our front yard. She was like, they have to live their lives. Like, you have to let it go, or she finds roly-polies. And one day she looked down at the baby and looked at me and she goes, oh, Mom, look. And I looked down and there's a roly-poly crawling across Winter's forehead, is my 7-month-old baby. And I was like, oh my gosh. And she goes, yeah, I have 3 of them. And I was like, well, where are the other 2? And she was like, I don't know. And I was like, don't bring them in the house.
we've had, so my kids for a while with roly-polies, they were like, how do we know the gender of this roly-poly? And I was like, I don't know. So we spent a whole day like looking at pictures on the internet of like undersides of roly-polies and kind of and I was like, okay, that's what we're doing today. That's
what did you learn? That's so
I don't
cool.
remember. I don't remember about how to identify a roly-poly, but I did that day figure it out with them. And so I think all of this curiosity driven, where do we get information? How does the world work? What are all these pieces to it? I think this is all helpful in helping our kids sort of understand connections between things. And
Brody just asked for his birthday. He wants an ant run, like an epic. So we went online and we looked at some of the ones that you can get in Australia, because I have a farm in Australia. And I was like, we're not getting it here in LA. It's not going to sit in our backyard here. We don't really have a backyard. But in Australia, we have 10 acres of land. And I was like, all right, we're going to get this massive ant run. And he's so psyched. That's all he wants for his birthday. His birthday's not for another year. So I've still got some time. But I love it. I think that's just so beautiful. The minds of children, they're so expansive, they're so interested. So it's wonderful just to nurture their curiosity like that. I think it's, brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, getting outside too is something that Teresa and I talk about, with just getting in this routine of being in the house and being on homeschool or Zoom school or whatever it is that you're doing. Like, a lot of times the mood and energy of your kids can sort of, they feel like caged animals, right? Mm-hmm. So part of that is just kind of like going outside for a minute, having a little snack break or, a lunch or something outdoors, and then your bodies can relax. You can soak in some vitamin D and get a little bit of time in nature, which is so great. I wanted to ask you, in terms of your community, a lot of times with moms, in normal times when we're actually in school, when kids are in school, your community is really like the women that your kids are going to school with, because you're constantly doing school projects or organizing or whatever it is. So I'm curious how you do this for your kids at their school, but how do you, sometimes having these conversations can feel a little bit scary, because you're like, I'm not super educated in it. That's how I've always felt, is that, and then it's intimidating to bring something up and then not necessarily know everything. You're like, okay, I think we should do this, this community thing, for the school. But you're like, but then I don't really have a lot of action items. So how do you do that for your kids' school, and how do you sort of inform or bring it up, and where people don't feel necessarily, I don't know, shamed or finger pointing or intimidated by that conversation?
Yeah. So this is funny for me to acknowledge to both of you. So well, I'm a scientist, right? So not surprising, maybe I'm a little bit introverted, right? But so for me, having these videos show up, right, and this public presence is a completely new thing, right? So neighborhood kids and other moms are like, we might have seen you on TV, right? And so for both of you, this might be like a normal thing. But for me, I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I was playing in my neighborhood yet. So this is a new navigation for me. This sort of public personal mixture here, right? So on a personal level with my kids in school, right, I will, this year's hard because of COVID, right? But pre-COVID, right, I volunteered to go in and read a book that's written by the EPA about the air quality index, that has this lizard that changes colors. It's great. Just read that to my kids' class. So you can read the book, right? Read the book. And I brought in a little air monitoring device from my friend's lab. So that is a very simple thing, right? And on a community level with my, girlfriends, let's say, right, in town, they know what I work on, right? So, and I've been sharing the Science Moms information with them. And that is a very easy thing that anybody can do, right? Is to share this information. I think that when we think about climate change and we think about feeling worried about talking about it, right? 80% of moms care about climate change, more than 80%, it's like 83, 84%, right? They care about climate change. And so moms are not alone in this concern about this issue, right? It's just that people aren't talking about it because they're nervous about talking about it. Mm-hmm. So I think like moms should feel very comfortable saying like, I'm worried about this. I'm not sure what we should do. What should we do? What are you doing? What should, and have that, because I think you can feel very comfortable that other moms are feeling the same set of worry. And so you don't have to know all the answers, right? Exactly what to do, but you starting the conversation in whatever space is very important. And I think you will be surprised that you will be very welcomed. Oh, I'm so glad you're talking about this. Like, I'm worried about it too. Right. And so I think, that's something that moms should be less afraid of talking about it, because we know that most moms are worried about it. And so the goal of Science Moms is to give you just enough information that you can like get over that hump of like, I care about this issue. I want to talk about it. I'm not exactly sure, right, what I can do, but I want to work on it. That's what Science Moms is hoping to push people over the edge with.
So they can go to your website and watch videos and read stuff to be like, okay, this is how I can communicate.
Yeah. And this is how this resonates with me. And like, I actually want to bring this up to the PTA, or I actually want to bring this up. I feel comfortable emailing my representative, right? Like, but there's many parts of activism, right? There's many parts of being part of change that society needs, right? Educating yourself is step one, right? And you don't have to feel guilty if that's where you are, right? That's fine. You're on the train, like, yes. Right. And so I think, there's you should, as a mom, as a busy mom, right? There's all sorts of things that you can do. And that contribution, no matter where it is and how it is so needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. We wrote this book called the Zen Mama Guide. And in the last chapter of the book, we talk a lot about what kind of parents do we want to be, and what kind of role do we want to set for our children. And we talk about action items. There's like different things that you can do. And that we, came up with a list ourselves of things that we try to incorporate and educate our kids on in our book. And so, like some of them are like practicing a meatless Monday, or, having conversations surrounding that. Reducing your water waste, no more plastic water bottles or bags, and sending them. I was like reading out of the book right now because I'm not going to remember anything that we.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just like, I'm not going to remember anything that we wrote down in here, but that kind of, I'm curious, like, what would be do you have like a fast 8 action items? Like, what are your things that, you could rifle off and be like, okay, these are things that you could do, super easy things that you could do in your own home.
Yeah.
For moms.
Yeah. So the one thing though, that's super important about is that climate change is an us problem.
Yes.
And so that's what makes it a little different than some of these other environmental issues, is that right now, given the level of action and the level of solutions that need to be deployed on the timeline that needs to be deployed, right? We have to radically change the way we're producing and using energy.
Yes.
And that is an us problem. That is a society level problem. And we need leadership to do that, right? So right now, the voice is the thing. Use the voice, right? Use the voice, use your outside voice, use the loud voice, use the mom voice. Like, use your outside voice. Like, because the speed at which we need to make a societal shift away from fossil fuels, it's very urgent and it has to happen now, and we have to work together to do it, right? So all these individual actions are amazing, but don't lose the voice in doing that. Right? Like that's, I think, a really key message about climate change is it might make you feel good to, really dial in that recycling this week, right? But it would be much better if you just use the voice, right now, because we have to make the shift and we have to make it so quickly. And the timeline is very real, right? We have 10 to 15 years to do this. And that is a short timeline for the level of changes that we need to make. The other thing in that big voice that I want to give people hope for is you should think about our action on climate change as preserving the life that we have, right? Not as, this massive sacrifice. The way I think about it is this is preserving the world we have and the parts of it we love for our kids. This is positive. Like, this is awesome. And so don't lose the voice. That being said, all the things you said are totally great, right? Use less energy and eat less meat.
Yeah, but I think that is so important. And I love that you said that, is that really it's about us taking those moments to educate ourselves through Science Moms or through these other websites or books or organizations. And then we can go out into our community. But not only that, we're also educating these little bitty people who are just, I say, Teresa and I talk about this all the time. Like, if this is a part of our little kids' lives, if we make these changes and communicate with them about this, if it's a part of their lives, it's just going to be natural to them. It's not going to be like what it was for us, where we're learning all this stuff later in life, where it was like, oh, there's Earth Day, we planted a tree, and then that's it, like. That's how it was when I was growing up. And I did grow up on a farm and I knew about animals and agriculture and all those things. But there were so many bigger picture things I did not learn until I was older. And so,
and I struggle with this too, right? Like, I ride my bike to work. We're almost vegan, but we fail sometimes because I do like sharp cheddar cheese, and it does sneak in because I think that's the New Englander, right? Like, the maple syrup and sharp cheddar cheese is just really hard. It's just really hard.
That was the hardest bit for me, was teaching dairy.
So we're up and down in that, right? So we do these things, and it's not to say that I don't do them, and I struggle with it too. But when I think about how I'm prioritizing my time right now, it's voice.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, give yourself a little slack, Emily, but use the voice. And I struggle with this because I'm not an extrovert. I'm working hard on this interview, right? But I say, like, I can be brave and I can be nervous at the same time, but we got to talk about this, just like any other hard topics, right? And so I want to give moms that sort of courage, because it's so needed. Your voices are so needed on this issue, because that love for your kids, and we all share it, right? We all, no matter where you are in the political spectrum, you love your kids, right? You die for your kids. And so this feeling, this is what we need to bring to climate action right now.
I find that whenever I try and vocalize some of the reasons why we've chosen to go plant-based, I'm oftentimes met with just I guess, friction in a sense, because people are so afraid to change and they're so set in their ways and they have their routines, and it just is, it's inconvenient for them to change the ways they've been doing things. And I try and talk about it from such a loving place, and I can get discouraged because I'm being met with this sort of energy that feels like I get shut down. And then sometimes I start just second guessing myself, and I think, well, there are people like, you know, Dr. Fischer out there who she's actually a proper expert, and she's the one that should be talking about this stuff. But actually, I love what you say. Everyone can use their voice, no matter where you stand and what you do, and how your life looks like. If you passionately believe in helping to create positive change in the world, then just be open and brave and courageous, because it's just so needed. So I love that. Thank you for talking about that.
I could be brave and I could be scared at the same time. And I think that's so great, because we talk about with our kids all the time. You can be sad and you can be happy at the same time. We can feel grief, but we can also feel joy. And I think those things are all beautifully partnered. Well, Dr. Emily Fischer, thank you so much for doing this EMA Talk with us. It means the world to us. Like, we are two moms who are, you know, trying really hard to communicate with our children and implement these things in our community. And you have given us so many things here today that I think are really important. But most importantly, understanding that using our voice is such a big part of all of this, and educating ourselves, which for me, I love learning. The more I learn, the more I grow, the more it helps me to feel empowered. So I really appreciate that. And I will check out Science Moms, and we will tell our community to check out.
We'll spread the news of Science Moms. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I feel like I've learned so much in this past 45 minutes. It's like, I'm going to go back to the kids and be like, right, this is what we're going to do today.
Oh, it was wonderful to meet and chat with both of you, and thanks for everything you're doing. And yeah, happy Mother's Day to both of you.
Thank you. Happy Mother's Day. What a great way. What a great way to end this. Happy Mother's Day. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.